A 6-demon bag. Sensational. What's in it, egg? And welcome back to the Rancor Pit. This is probably going to be the last video of 2018 because my December schedule is going to be kind of berserk with, family stuff and whatnot. But I thought I'd go ahead and go out on a high note and share with you my minuscule crowd of fans. There we are. Some of the crazier players that I actually created as NPCs for the Heroes and Villains storyline. Now, initially, my very first character I used for this chronicle was one of the guys in here that I'll talk about. His name's Garnett. More specifically, his name is Garnett of House Porter. And his backstory, I got around to integrating in the, if you remember right from my previous video, in the timeline fracture. I got to institute his past before he became what everyone knew him as. And it really added another element of depth to the character that not even I thought I was going to create. But it worked out too well, so I said, what the hell, let's go with it. But aside from him, I have a whole laundry list of people. This poor Spiral got, this red one, it got used, abused, and loved whenever I started just creating character after character after character after character, some of which I haven't, some of them I haven't used, some of them I haven't used enough. So, yeah, I thought I'd talk about some of these. Let's see, the first one I got, yeah, in the actual Spiral that I started with, was a creature character. He is a Medusa. I think I made him a redeemed villain, but I got the chance to play Haxie like twice in the whole almost 3 years. This is going on in April. It'll be, is it April? No, February. February will be 3 years that I've been going along with this. I only got to play him twice, and I really want to get back to him because I love the way I built him. He's a Medusa, a male Medusa, and he's an ECL 6, and he's a Mountebank 7. I had no base class because the Medusa was such a combat-oriented class. I had everything I needed. I didn't really have to take any other feats either. I thought I was going to blow feats like, was it Able Learning? I think it is. It's called in D&D. Pick a skill, it becomes class from that point on or whatever. But no, I didn't have to. Yeah, his deal is he's been in the Outer Planes for some time, like physically traveling before the actual like joining the bonding of planes where you had to go through it physically. He was literally traveling from the Outer Rims all the time because as a Mountebanks, he has one of the abilities he has is called Alter Ego, and it gives you the ability to physically change yourself into something else, and it had to be your base type. Now, if you do this to a regular character, like Mountebank to a regular character, it's no big deal, right? You're a human, change another human, change another human, change it to an elf, change it to an orc. It was all humanoids, right? Well, he is a monstrous humanoid, so I had to get a little creative. I wanted to take a Decanter Goblin just to have it, because I thought it was really cool. But the Decanter Goblin can be found in the Creatures of Faerun, I think, the little floppy book. Yeah, Monstrous Compendium of Faerun. And the other one I chose was a Skulk Duke. Yeah, Skulk Duke. Yeah. This one appears as a human, because Medusa to a human is a big shift. Except they appear like luminescent, literally, like their skin's like almost like bioluminescent. But they look like nobles, and they're really, really like uppity. So I could easily explain him being that as like an planar traveling like noble. And doing it that way, giving him a whole nother depth of playability. If you had to get somewhere or do something or go someplace, because who's going to invite a Medusa to like a grand king's ball or whatever? So he was really cool because of the feats that I chose for him. Most of them were creature feats. Virulent Poison, Narrowed Gaze, which gives him the ability to exclude all of his allies that he chose to consider allies for his actual petrifying gaze. Deadly Poison, so his poison is really, really powerful. Deceitful, improved bite for a D6 for the head snakes. Weapon finesse head snakes. I looked it up. I could do it. And telling blow is actually kind of nice because Mountebank gives you a couple of D6s worth of sneak attack, and you got that for basically free. So only thing he carries on him is an adamantine dagger. That's it. That's the only other weapon he carries on him. He has a couple of magic items, Amulet of Mighty Fist 3, so the snakes actually bite as a +3. Rogue's Vest, Ring of Invisibility, Ring of Protection 5, Healing Belt, Adamantine Dagger, and a Hero's Handy Haversack. That's it. He didn't carry anything else on him. He has four big... I forget which kind of snakes I chose. In my original notes, the original markup notes, I had that, but I don't seem to have included it. But yeah, his poison. Let's see. The snakes do D6 plus 5. The poison is Fortitude DC 23. First effect is a D6 strength. Second effect is a 2D6 strength times 2 because I had the 2 feats. So it's actually really, really like a mess. So yeah. Yeah, like I said, I've used him twice. I want to get back to using him because he's a really nifty character. I just haven't been able to because I've been doing so many other things with other people. So the next guy I'm going to talk about, I have to talk about in 3 different ways. The first way is who I originally created to be the central bad guy to the story, essentially. You could call it the big bad evil guy, the BBEG. I would have if I didn't do what I did with the character. Because I did planar timeline fractures, I also had him fracture. Now initially, all he was a cleric, master of Shroud, out of the Libris Mortis. So he had a very, very strong connection to... I believe it's Wraiths. Yeah, I think it's Wraiths. Incorporeal Undead. To the point where he took on some of the undead traits and he was able to command them like on a whim and summon them on a whim. He became the Tyrant King in Material Prime 1. Yeah, and there's 2 of them. Material Primes, that is. He became the big bad that is supposed to be the end of the campaign. We'll see how things progress and if things can properly go through with what I had originally planned for the campaign to the players to suffer with, essentially. But he became a Hierophant to further boost his combat prowess and his abilities. And he's already taken out a PC, a rather powerful PC. One of my other players had a Goliath Dustblade, and the Dustblade found Gronich, which is his name, Gronich, became the creator, the architect, and the original protectorate of Okarthel, the treetop revived elven community that refugees were essentially using in the Celadon Forest. If you don't know what all this means, go and look at a really good quality Greyhawk map. Just below cities like Radagast, and right next to Woodwitch and B2, the towns, there's this forest, right, south of the Radagast and west of those 2 little towns, right before you get down to where the bay is. The Celadon Forest is an old place that I chose to be the most centric to what's going on. And they rebuilt the old rotted elven village in the treetop, 50 feet up, over massive, massive trees that are like, 200 feet wide kind of trees. So he became the grand architect to the base storyline, but whenever he went after what was causing all the problems in the realm, when they found out who it was, he got to the kingdom, Navond, and again, Greyhawk map, and busted into the castle with an ally, an NPC of mine called Gator, and he ended up being I think he was a Ranger Deepwood Sniper. I think he's Ranger. He might be Barbarian, because he's from the Black Ripper Tribe Barbarians I've been using. But yeah, he went with him, and they busted in, caught the king in the middle of stuff, and they found out his name finally. His name is Ordo Crowfire, and he's the king of the area. And it really angered Gronich because the person that originally killed Gronich in the first place, before he was chosen by the elven god, Corellian Litharian. I can never pronounce his name properly. Corella Litharian. Lorethian, I think it is. The king's private assassin, an invisible blade, a rogue invisible blade, was there, and then when Grotich decided to go ahead and attack, he took off and was unable to be, got to. But King Crowfire ended up killing Grotich with one good swing of his weapon, which is called Harvester, and it's a +1 keen consumptive blood-feeding scythe. It's a +8 weapon. And there's a reason it's so high, too. It's because he's actually an epic character. That's why it's meant to be, a big bad. But he was a mess, too. But he has two other facets. And collectively they run into both of them. The other facet that I created whenever the realms split, let me find it here. There's King Lu. So many characters. So many characters. There it is. The other facet he split into was a man named Audax Quint. And he is a Shadowcaster. Now, I got the Tome of Magic some time ago, but I was never actually able to sit down and create anything out of it. And the first thing I wanted to do was try a Shadowcaster. And I made him. And he's a bit of a mess, too. He has a capability with one of his mysteries, his shadow mysteries. One of them is called the Tomb of Night, and he can trap you in an invisible, essentially box, and it'll just start doing massive amounts of con damage to you immediately. It'll kill you, because there's no way to get out of it, right? So that's one of the facets he split into, and he's already pestered the group a few different times because they keep occasionally hearing what sounds like leather bat wings flying around in the distance, almost like there's a silent watcher around. It's not him, it's his dark creature template shadow familiar. It's a Vargul. So he's been specifically looking at the rest of the parties, and I do say parties because there's a whole bunch of them split, getting intel and finding out what they're all up to, right? And the other facet he split into, Grotich, ironically enough, met this guy inside of the ruins, the old dwarven megacity ruins of Antioch. They found him as basically an abandoned mercenary that was down there treasure looting. And his name, well, he didn't actually have a name. The reason he didn't have a name because whenever they split, he forgot everything. Not quite everything. He knew some things, but he couldn't give a name because he didn't know it. But it was essentially Audax Quint, and his name that they gave him was Thuril, Thuril, and that's Draconic for friend. You pronounce it Thrill. Grotich is a really good-hearted character is the problem. Now, not to say that this guy is bad, because he's not. I made him as a Fighter 11, and as soon as the leader of the mercenary group, Crossbones, left him down there to die, he took on a level of Ronin, and that's what he'll go up in from now on. So, I've used him a couple of different times, and he's right now with one of the parties going after the Theocracy of the Pale. Again, check a Greyhawk map. It's east of the Celadon Forest. They're going after the Theocracy of the Pale because there's a drow wizard that's in power there, and he's helping the corrupted King Crowfire. So, yeah. Anyway, so that's the triple split bad guy that I've used, in conjunction with each other. But the King is one of the more nastier creations I made, just because of all the undead involvement. He can mess you up fast. Let's see. Here's one. Initially, I had a gnome come to Okarthel as essentially a refugee with some other human and humanoids. And his name that he gave was Burke. Now, I stole that completely from Kingdoms of Amalur. It's a PS3 game. The Travelers, the group of Travelers, one of the guys calls you Burke. more as kind of like a passive insult than anything else. I liked the simple name, and gnomes have weird names anyway, so I named him Burke. He wasn't what he appeared, though. What he was doing for Grotich was basically being the financier and the accountant of Okarthel to be able to start a currency system so they can actually thrive as its own independent entity in the area, right? What he actually was doing was using his know-how with finances and the fact that he's a sorcerer and a mindbender. He was creating the possibility of leaving periodically Okarthel, going east beyond the Wood Witch village that was overrun by undead and was blasted to the ground by the brass dragon who protects the the Elven Village now. He went out there, found the lost city of Antioch, dug it up, called a whole bunch of mercenaries from all over the kingdom to come and basically buy looting permits. You know, you have, you know, you can buy them in day blocks or week blocks, and you go down there and the liability is all yours. You go down there, you loot, he gets a percentage of whatever you bring back, you know, whatever, if you survive. Under that name, his business was created as Fingbo Nackerbach. Again, gnome names. He became kind of a antagonist there for a while because Grunge wouldn't trust him. But he ended up coming to help, bringing a method of travel back to Okarthel so they can go to the Theocracy of the Pale in a fast. He brought basically a bunch of giant owls so they can actually fly out there fast instead of having to do it the old-fashioned way because things were getting worse, right? So he ended up being kind of almost an anti-hero in a sense. Then there's Krek Martial Eagle. He's a catfolk. I got the... what the hell did I get? The Races of the Wild, I think it is, yeah. And well, catfolk was one of them. It cost me... It didn't cost me anything, actually. They didn't have any level adjustments. But he's a catfolk. He's a barbarian and a sanctified one of Cord. And he has one level of Reaping Mauler. He is all about the unarmed combat, improved unarmed strike, superior unarmed strike, so he hits like a monk without being a monk. Flying kick, clever wrestling, raptor skull, you know, feats for his capabilities. And he's just kind of a mess whenever it comes to unarmed damage because he ends up doing, what does he end up doing? A D10 plus 8. You know, that's a mess for just a bare-knuckle fighter. He has a couple of different magic items. Cloak of Battle, Belt of Battle, Gloves of Titan's Grip, because those are good, really good for grappling. Armbands of Might, Helm of Glorious Recovery, Shirt of the Ironskin, Boots of Tracklessness, Ring of Avoidance, Bag of Holding 4, Rod of Surprises, Amulet of Mighty Fist 3, Mithril Shirt. So he's got a couple of things that he has on him, but whenever it comes to just unadulterated beatdowns, Krek was the guy. However, Krek... And I did a chance to actually use him, so I was happy with using him the way I did, because the Sanctified One abilities are actually pretty cool. That came out of the Complete Champion. I got a chance to use him enough to where I was you know, comfortable with what happened. He ended up, much like all the other NPCs that I have and all the other NPCs that the other players have, whenever they, from different shards, whenever they end up coming together in one place, a mind meld occurs. No, not like Scott or Spock or anything. This is not Star Trek, but it's one person's will wins over. The person who fails disappears, and all of their memories all go into the winner's head. Now, Krek lost to Yizik, my Poison Dust Lizardfolk Ranger, who was Gronish's best friend and companion and builder of Okarthel and savior and protectorate and all around like a little lizard buddy. So Krek is inside of Yizik's head. I haven't made up my mind if the NPCs are going to eventually come back out and split, but because I'm taking this to epic level, I may not have them do that. And that's already happened to a couple of the PCs too, which is kind of funny. Anyway, I'll go ahead and, let's see, I'll save the rest of mine for next time, but I will, yeah, there's a lot here I'll do for next time. I will go ahead and talk about Garnet a little more. Garnet is a human cleric of St. Cuthbert and a war priest. He wasn't always like that. Essentially, his prequel to what they knew, by the way, he was in the very first game of this whole campaign. The prequel to what they knew of as Garnet was he was in Faerun, the Forgotten Realms. He was in I forget which town it was about this big though. He was in a town. It was completely overrun by undead, and I modified the undead to be a lot more lethal because I had, you know, Libris Mortis. I love that book. I made the undead rather lethal, and the people were huddled into the actual church, and all of the clerics and acolytes all boarded up the windows, heavy duty, and made sure nothing could get in. And the clerics could continuously like create food and water, so that wasn't the problem. That's just venturing out would be very, very dangerous, especially since there was like one head priest that was like, you know, 10th level, 12th level or something like that, and the rest of them were like very low level clerics. So they had to stick with them if they were going to survive. And there's like 100 people in that little church, but they made do, and one of the other PCs, along with, oddly enough at the time, Sungo was with him. Sungo Bruid, my halfling war mage. They found a way in. They found out that these people were all not trapped, but kind of sort of against their will, but it was against their will for the purposes of survival. And they had it out with the priest, and they got into an argument. Well, the PC got into an argument because Sungo, being chaotic neutral, he's more adept. He'd rather blast somebody and get the point across than anything else. Not kill you, just teach you a really, really harsh lesson. But they had it out. They had a bit of an argument, and the PC was making enough of a point. So what came down to it is that right before the head priest tried to do a spell, and it didn't work. And that spell was to change the PC's mind to make him leave. PC realized what he was doing. I think it was an occult slayer, and that's why this really like set off the whole scene. And the other like acolytes were seeing what's going on, and they didn't know whether or not they should defend their head priest or they should listen to the outsiders. And eventually, right before the head priest was going to physically attack the occult slayer, one of the acolytes picked up his mace, his St. Cuthbert's heavy mace, and used the pommel end of it, popped the head priest and knocked him out. And that started what happened with Garnett. Initially, he wasn't removed from the faith, but what he was is removed from essentially that parish, isn't quite the right word, but that particular secular group. Once the head priest came to, he basically kicked Garnett out into the undead infested lands and said, may St. Cuthbert have mercy on you. And he walked for a long time. Obviously, he realm hopped because he eventually went from Faerun to Material Prime, and that's when he met Soralas, the elven, I think is an elven ranger, peerless archer, and Henry, the human warlock. And those were the two first people that he was introduced to in the old village of Oakhart. And the day after they left, he disappeared because I wanted to rewrite some other stuff into the storyline, and I had him come back later as a high-level cleric and a 10th level war priest of St. Cuthbert. And his backstory was he'd found out what was going on in the Theocracy of the Pale, and how that Drow Wizard had taken over and was doing a lot of things he shouldn't have, and was helping King Crowfire corrupt the entire realm and split everything into splinters. He actually raised an entire army out of the common folk, gave him what he could, trained him, used what tacticians he could find amongst them, and actually went to storm the Theocracy of the Pale, more specifically the city of Wintershiven. And it didn't work because somebody was within the Theocracy of the Pale and the leadership of Wintershiven. Somebody was able to kind of predict the future, and they saw it coming. So the army got obliterated. Garnett, as punishment, got thrown into limbo, and he was approached by St. Cuthbert's herald, the Hound Archon, and said, you have a choice. You can carry on from limbo yourself, do everything yourself, or you can be rewritten into what's going on, because the gods are seeing how everything on the mortal plane is becoming so bent out of shape that it'll never go back unless the Celestines and the gods start interfering when they shouldn't. So Garnett says, give me one more chance. So he did, and he ended up becoming the champion of St. Cuthbert as a result. And his biggest advantage is the fact that I made him with the ability to start pumping out relics. He can do St. Cuthbert's normal relics out of the Magic Item Compendium and the Complete Divine, but I actually made a custom-made relic. It is a weapon, it's a war mace with the head resembling two St. Cuthbert crosses and a big X. So it's an X this way and then it's an X the other way combined, so it almost looks like a star. And he named it Lawbringer. And it's a +1 mace that bestows bull strength on the wielder as long as they are lawful good or lawful neutral, and its continuous effect and requires no activation. The relic ability is once a day the wielder casts Inflict Light Wounds Mass. As a 10th level cleric spell, Wisdom 18 +4, does a d8 +10 to evil only, unlike the actual spell. And since it's a relic, the undead that are harmed by it are not healed. And craft arms and armor, sanctified relic, bull strength, and inflict light mass. And it's 10,400 market price, 10-day creation, 416 XP, 5,200 GP and raw materials, and you require the 5th level spell or True Believer plus 9 hit dice. I did the complete normal formula for a relic out of the Magic Item Compendium. He doesn't carry one of these. He made something a lot bigger. He made Gavel. It's a war mace that's sized. And I gave him, let's see, exotic weapon proficiency war mace to have it. And because you can use a war mace in one hand, since he had the feet. Because normally war mace is used in 2 hands if you don't have the feet. But if you have the feet, it turns into a martial one-handed weapon. And I made a sized one he carries with him, so no shield. It's a +1 holy collision war mace. It does 3d6 plus 12, and it does plus additional 2d6 to evil foes at 20 times 2. And that combined with the fact that he has Fragile Construct as a reserve feat and Improved Sunder as a feat, he is a wrecking ball in combat. That's why I made him a war mace, or war priest rather. And the only thing he has is the Gloves of Endless Javelins with him, so that he can produce a short end, range weapon. He does have the Tabard of the Great Crusade, which is another one of St. Cuthbert's relics. Ring of Sustenance, Ring of Arming, Eternal Wand to cure serious wounds, Braces of AC +1, and Cloak of Charisma +6, and he has Quicksilver Boots. 2 times a day, move up to full speed, including a charge, ×3 or ×4 movement, over water and liquids, but must start and finish on ground. Attack of opportunity still occur, but apply concealment. If I remember right, I don't remember whether or not I created that or it came out of the Magic Item Compendium. I can't remember for the life of me. But anyway, he has, only thing else he has is the Helm of the Hunter set piece, just so he has the Farshot ability. And it gives him the low light vision and dark vision once a day for 4 hours. But, yeah, he's a bit of a mess. I like Garnet, so does everybody else. He's a rather fan favorite for the entire campaign. And he was going off to Winter Shivan with Burke and Thrill to go deal with the problems that were happening there that they all knew was coming from in conjunction with King Crowfire. So he, yeah. And initially, Gronich had to break him. I had to break Krek out of the dungeon in Winter Shivan, as basically Krek was supposed to eat Garnet, because Garnet was technically dead, but his body hasn't quite decayed, and his soul was there, so he was completely aware of everything. So they dumped him into the pit where Krek was chained, and Krek was supposed to eat him. He's a catfolk, he's a lion, he's a barbarian, sure, feed him something. But they broke out, went through the sewers, got out, got back into the level ground of the dungeon, and ended up finding Garnet being tortured, and them trying to figure out how to use his war mace. So they freed him, and the 3 of them all escaped and bonded as close friends. And when Garnet all came back with Krek to Okerthel, he agreed to be its protectorate while Gronich was away for whatever reason. And it only came with a small price of, if people wanted to convert to St. Cuthbert, Gronich wouldn't stop them. Because he's the champion of Corellian, and Garnet's a champion of St. Cuthbert. So he said, as long as you don't, I don't specifically try to convert your people, but if they come to me, you don't try to stop them from converting to me, to St. Cuthbert. And he said, fine, we'll do it that way. And eventually Garnet was supposed to have his own community, but the problem is, whenever the big party finally came back from Dis, they came back to Material Prime 1 the hard way to find Okerthel and, under siege by half-vampire gnolls again, who were burning the place up, and who almost, well, they don't know whether or not they saved him or not, but the caretaker, Kipper, the witch, out of the DMG, I think it is, standard issue, Build of a Witch. It's like a sorcerer, but with a lot of enchantments and illusions. The caretaker was half dead, burning alive, and they protected him. They killed all the gnolls, and they went after the source, and Garnet was nowhere to be found. And that's whenever Henry and Henry, the warlock, and the disgraced cleric of Damara, they left to go deal with everybody else was helping the Okarthal village, and that's where we held it. But they haven't found if Garnet's even on that caravan yet, that undead caravan. So yeah, I'll get back to the rest of the NPCs next video. I've now run 30 minutes. I think this is officially my longest video. But yeah, I'll pick back up with next time. Bruce Cruz, he's another fan favorite. He's appeared a couple of different times. He's a mummy character I made. So anyway, I said this will be the last video I think of 2018, and we'll pick it back up with the gaming of Heroes and Villains in January. I just don't know quite when. But anyway, thanks you guys for tuning in for 2018. Been an awesome year for gaming because I got back to it after that very long hiatus, and I got a couple of new players. I got some new players coming in after the new year, so it'll be great. It'll be a nice full table again. All right, so you guys take it easy and have a safe holiday at the end of the year. And of course, by holiday I mean blanketed Merry Christmas and everything else. So don't get me wrong, okay? I don't need hate mail because whatever. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful holiday, and as always, grab your dice and roll initiative.